Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Om, and VFS folks, you know me. And from Kony perspective, I look after quality, risk, and BCM for VFS. And this session is about Credit 360 system reporting discipline. So we are all here. We are the one which are chosen one from the organization who will contribute to the sustainability reporting regulations. So we are here to understand the Credit 360 degree system. Just to give you a quick background so that we all are aware of why we are doing this, why now, why I am the person who is being doing this, why not somebody else. So some of the points I want to clarify on the call so that you have enough clarity on this and we pay enough attention towards this initiative. So this is about our executive board of Kony Group had requested our business to start reporting our environmental contributions from a sustainability reporting perspective. So this is how all the stakeholders or the group companies of Kony got together, and then we started reporting our numbers in that fashion. VFS as a group is already certified on 14001 standard. So we have a lot of data points and everything available with us. But the same thing needs to be reported into a system so that Kony as a group comes out with their sustainability numbers and they can report it publicly. Hence, we as a part of this group plays a major role into putting in those data points into the system. So here we are together to learn the system. That system is being created by Kony. So it's a Kony Group Credit 360 degree system. So it will be facilitated by Stephanie. So she is there from the Kony side, and we will have some more individuals, those who are there in the group, to take us through the same presentation. So I take this opportunity to thank each one of you for joining this call and hand it over to Stephanie to take it on from here.
Thank you. Thank you also very much for all of the support that you've given the project in the beginning phases leading up to this training. My name is Stephanie. I am the project lead working in the corporate responsibility department of the Kony Group, and I'm very happy to be working with all of you on this, and I appreciate all of your times. You know, as Om has said, you know, this is quite an important initiative that we have here at Kony. It has been mandated by the executive board. Just to give you a little bit of a background, in the 3 Kony Group divisions, we have been reporting our environmental performance since 2011 for our outbound division. And we are adding GTS and VFS divisions this year with all the trainings taking place concurrently. Om touched a little bit on why we do this, and I think it's important for you to know exactly why it is that we are engaged in this. First, I do want to point out that environmental and sustainability reporting is becoming increasingly mandatory. Currently, there are about 142 regulatory instruments addressing sustainability reporting across 30 countries. So it's very much a global push towards not just reporting your financial performance, but also your environmental and your social performance. And as you all know, with ISO 14001, it's mandatory to report on your environmental impacts. In addition, our investors are increasingly demanding that we report these metrics. For instance, Ocom Research, which is a leading rating agency in sustainable investments, they have an investment volume of 520 billion euros. They have recently rated Kony through a very intensive vetting process. And out of the 40 travel and tourism companies they rated, only 3 of them qualified for prime status. And of these, Kony was rated prime and was also noted as the most sustainable travel company. I can tell you from having seen this process from the inside that we would not have achieved this without having had commitment from the executive board for this project. So you do play a very vital role, not just in improving the performance of our environmental impact in your own offices, but for the whole group as a whole. And finally, as you probably can most clearly see, when you actually improve the environmental performance, you also save costs. And if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And if you don't manage it, you can't improve it. So the first thing that we really need to know is where exactly are the impacts occurring, how much water are we using, how much paper are we using. If we don't know these things, then we will not be able to know if we are consuming more than our peers in other offices, or how to improve this. For instance, last year we had seen that here at the head office we were actually using about 10 times more paper than our peers in the Scandinavian offices. So we were able to go to them to seek advice on how they're able to keep a good environmental practice. And I think this is a very important key, that we will be able to connect with each other across the Kuoni world and find the best practice and learn from each other. So I do urge you to come to me with any questions and feedback, and especially if you're interested in finding out how you are performing compared to other offices. I'm very happy to provide you with that information. And without further ado, I'd just like to hand it over now to Tom Caldecott, who's the implementation manager at Credit360, and he's going to take us through what you have to do when you're in the system. Tom?
Thank you very much, Stephanie. So yeah, I'm Tom Caldecott, as Stephanie mentioned. I work for the implementation team here in Credit360. I've worked with Stephanie over my colleagues have worked beyond that to help build out the system QA into a data entry system where you can enter in all your environmental data. So you should be able to see my screen at the moment. This is the standard login page. And that can be found at qonly.credit360.com. You'll shortly be receiving a welcome email to the system if you're going to be entering data or approving data, which will give you all of this information. You'll be invited to the system with a username, which is usually your first name and your surname, and then you'll be asked to set a password. For the very first time you enter the system, you'll want to click the forgotten password link. I'm now going to enter the system as a typical user who's going to be entering data about their environmental performance. So the very first time you log in, you'll be taken to this administration tab, where you can change information about your personal details, your email address, your time zone, so on and so forth. You've also got an area of the system called Client Connect, and this is a good resource if you get stuck or if you need help. So if we just click through onto the Client Connect area, there's a series of videos and tutorials of how to use the system. Just running slightly slow this morning. So on the Client Connect website, you can see there's a knowledge base, which if you click through, you've got sections for training materials, case studies, and system guides. This morning, I'm going to be walking through how to be a data provider, how to approve data. So if at the end of this session you're unsure about anything, you may want to visit those videos, as well as the recording of this webinar that I'm currently undertaking. So if I go back to the system, subsequently when you log in, you'll be taken to the data entry tab. Now, this data entry tab is important because it will tell you any data that you're waiting for and any data which is outstanding. In this case, we can see that there is just one survey which we're being asked to complete, which is the VFS Environmental Survey. If for any reason this survey was overdue, this link would be shown as red. Here you can see that this data is due on the 1st of January 2014, therefore it's currently not overdue. So if we click into this, we'll see the typical data entry page. So the data entry page is comprised of questions on the left-hand side, units in the middle, and an area to input that data on the right-hand side. You'll also notice in the top area here, it will tell you the region for which you're entering the data. Some of you, I know, have been assigned more than one region, data or more than one site. Therefore, you may have multiple data entry areas on this form. So within this VFS environmental display, we've got a number of different questions. To begin with, there's just some general information about your organisation, and that is relating purely to the region specified. So, for example, there's the total area occupied. And with this, you can choose different units. So if you want to measure it in square feet or square meters, you have that choice. So I'll enter in this value into that field. You can also fill out information on the total number of permanent staff, total number of temporary staff, and other staff. Also information about the total staff in terms of head counts rather than full-time equivalents, and some characteristics about the staff makeup: vegetarians, number of smokers, and number of environmental complaints. You also have an area to fill out your purchased electricity. Again, you can select the different measure and input a value in there. We have information about your renewable energy purchase, and on this form also any information about diesel generators. So in this case, you're asked to specify the number of diesel generators that you use, and also we can...
Hello, Tom.
Hello?
Tom. I'm sorry, we had quite a hard time hearing you at that moment. I'm going to ask all people listening in to please put their phones on mute if possible. And if you'd like to jump in with a question, feel free to do so. But meanwhile, please put your handsets to mute.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Sorry, just to run through that previous section before. Sorry, again, we've got an area here to enter your purchased electricity. And this is for the year that you're being asked to enter the data. So in this case, this is for 2030. So we enter in the information. You enter in the information about the amount of renewable that you're inputting, and also the number of diesel generators. And for each of the diesel generators you consume, that you use, you're asked to add additional information in the table below. So I just click on this table, and it gives me a pop-out piece of information. So how much diesel are you using? How much diesel per hour do they use? What's the horsepower? What's the noise pollution? What currency are you using? And in this case, you'll notice that there's a series of different currencies available within the system. If for any reason the currency that you wish to use isn't there, I think if you could use an online currency conversion tool to convert it to Swiss francs and input in Swiss francs, that would be the preferential way of entering data in this case. So you've also got cost per litre, and it will automatically calculate the total cost. Okay, so moving on, we've also got an area for entering fuel oil. And again, you can choose whether you want tons, gigajoules, or litres. You've also got an area for diesel oil and gas, and also natural gas. Water consumption in cubic metres, and the cost of cubic metres, again, with a drop-down. In the case of water, we're also being asked to upload any documentation to provide evidence. And this is really important. So in this case, we can choose a file. I'll put a dummy file, an energy invoice in there, but you can attach any file that you want to this form. When you submit it, that will go to your data approver. Running down this sheet further, we also have an area to enter information on paper usage. Again, this is a pop-out menu where you've got information on paper type. So you've got ICT, printing, mailing, and other. So it's important this isn't just the printer paper that you're taking account of. Got information on the amount of paper purchased, percentage of paper from recycled materials, again the cost, the currency. And in this case, we've also got an area to enter information on the waste. So any information on paper shredders, please enter the weight. And again, running through the different types of office waste, just entering the weight of paper disposed of. Also, the weight of the weight disposed of. We also have an area for business travel. So in this case, we're asked to select the vehicle type, so whether it's a passenger vehicle, a van, a pickup or an SUV, or a motorcycle. Choose the fuel type, how much fuel was used in litres, and total distance. And you can add as many of these on as you want. So you don't just have to have one record for a journey, you can have as many as you want. And those figures will be summed together to give a total amount of fuel, a total amount of carbon. There's also information on employee commuting within the workplace. So the number of employees biking or walking to work, and the distance of employees using that type of transport. And we've got that also for motorcycles, for personal vehicles, public transport. That's all of the information that you'll be asked to fill in for the VFS survey. I'll run through some more of the nuances of how to options which are available for you when filling out this survey. But if anyone's got any questions for either myself or for Stephanie on the content of this survey, now would be a good time to ask.
Tom, from my side, I just wanted to clarify quickly about the vehicles that are mentioned here under travel.
Absolutely.
Those are actually meant to be any vehicle which has been either owned by VFS or used for VFS purposes. So even if it's a vehicle owned by an employee, but it has been used for traveling for VFS business, then those miles and fuel consumed should be inputted as well.
Okay, fantastic. Do we have any other questions on the content of the survey from any of the delegates before we move on? I'll take that as a no. Just getting a little bit of interference on the line at the moment. So, if possible, if you could mute your, unless you wish to ask a question, if you can mute your line, that'd be great. Okay, so now we've run through the questions that you'll be asked, and now I'll just run through some of the features surrounding the questionnaire. So we've spoken about the data input area. There's lots of different options available for you. Firstly, you've got a chart on the right-hand side, and this will just show you any data input against this question over time. So you can view past records. In this case, this is the first year that we're filling out this data, and we only have 2013 as a data entry area. This is really helpful if you want to be able to see whether your data point has changed dramatically from year to year and help you iron out any mistakes. We'll also set thresholds which will prevent you or ask you for justification if your data is greater or less than, has changed by more or less than 25% from the previous year. There's also a really handy area for saving any notes against any other fields. So for example, if you're having trouble sourcing information or if you're unclear of the whether the information is correct, then this is the area to input it. So you might put, I'm not sure of the total area. And you can save that note against that field. Again, you can also add files to any of the data points. So any information that you can use to back up any of this data, always really useful to put files against data points. So again, I might just want to attach a piece of data. You can also query information, so if you're not sure that it's right, you can actually email anyone else who is a user on the Credit360 system to ask them questions about this data value. And this query chain is saved within the data point itself, but we'll go more into that in a few minutes. And finally, all of this is audit logged, so we can see exactly who's changed what at what time. So, although I haven't completely filled out this form, I'm now going to show you what the process would be like for the person who's approving this data. So if I submit this for approval, I'm asked to give a note to whoever will be approving this. So I might enter that this is not complete, but please review. And I can submit that. So you'll now notice that this changes to submitted on the 3rd of September 2013. And if I go back to my home page, my data entry tab, I now have no surveys on the data you're entering page. However, the data I've submitted has now changed to 1. And you can see that I've now submitted VFS Environmental Survey. So now I'm going to log out this system and log in as a data provider. So, sorry, a data approver. So if I log in, you'll see a very similar screen. However, it's slightly nuanced. We now have pending your approval, not submitted to you yet, and approved by you. So if I click on the VFS Environmental Survey, I'll be presented with a form that we've just filled in, with the notes and with the files, but I've got some different options here. I can approve the data if I'm completely happy with what's been submitted, and that will then go forward and be used in reporting. If for any reason I'm not happy with the information that's being put into this survey, I can return that with a note to the delegate. If I can see that there's an obvious error within the form and I want to really very quickly go and change that myself, I can also make this editable.
And just to clarify, for the VFS terminology versus the Credit360 terminology, the data provider, so the first form that we went through, that is usually what the environmental officers are going to be seeing. Then when they submit it, they send it up to their RQMs, who are, in this case, the so-called quote-unquote data approvers.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the clarification, Stephanie. Okay, so on this form you can see all of the information that we've put in, but I can now, because I've clicked this make editable, I can actually change the numbers myself. In this case, I'm actually just going to return this form to the delegate because I'm not happy with one of the numbers. So I can also query an individual data point, which is something we spoke about earlier. So I might not think that this number looks quite correct. So I can query this saying, please review, I think this is too low. Now you have the option to urgently notify the user. So if the change is required straight away, it will email the user as soon as you submit this query. If you don't select urgent, it will batch all queries up together and send one email at the end of the day. So you'll notice that now I've put a query against a piece of data, it now has a red question mark. I can return this to the delegate saying, please resolve all queries. And return that. Now, if I log back into the person completing the survey, you'll notice that my data I'm entering section has a new survey against it. And don't worry, you don't need to be logging into the system all the time to check whether this has changed. Every time somebody makes a change associated to a form that you submitted, you'll be emailed to your email account to let you know that something's changed. You can then log into the system and take the appropriate action. So once I click through onto this form, I can see a message asking me to resolve all the queries. I can also see that this value has queries due to the red question mark. So if I select that, I can add a comment or I can resolve. So I can see that they think this value is too low. So I can then click through to resolve it. I'm given lots of options. I can either assign this to somebody else within the system, or I might assign it to Stephanie, who may have the data, and whoever you assign it to can then progress this query on your behalf. Once you're happy with the data that you've found, you can respond and resolve. So I now believe that this is correct. And then you can save that, you can close that, and you can see that this now has a green tick against it. And we can resubmit that for approval. And just add a quick note explaining what you changed. So that's the process for getting data into the system, and that's also the process for making sure that the data is correct and that you've provided enough evidence. At this stage, have we got any questions that we would like to ask? Okay, in that case, I will move on. The final
no questions as of now.
Great. The final area I'd like to show you is just on the data entry tab. The charts that this package will produce. So these are indicative charts. They're not using real data at the moment. However, we want to be able to allow you to have some charting options, and you'll have a number of tabs across the top showing you information for not only yourself but other areas of the business, so you can compare performance. So once you've submitted your data, that will then be approved, and those numbers will then be fed into the charts and into the reporting system, so that you can compare your data against those of your peers. So that's everything I wanted to run through in this training session. You'll be subsequently getting welcome emails giving you information about how to log into the system, how to set up your passwords. But other than that, I think I'd like to hand back over to Stephanie, who will run through the timelines and what you can be expecting to do within the system over the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. I think the form is quite self-explanatory. We wanted to make it as straightforward as possible for you guys, and the information we're asking for is not new to you, since you've already filled similar information for OM during the ISO 14001 certification process. So hopefully the content is clear for you, and it's probably best if you just start playing around a little bit with the system and trying to